You're sitting at a kitchen table on a Tuesday afternoon, filling out a job application the same way someone fills out a form for an insurance company. Online, a long form, a resume you've polished for 3 hours, you're 22, Georgetown degree, international relations, passable Arabic, you've never fired a weapon, you don't own one. The form asks for references, employment history, foreign travel, standards. Then it asks whether you've ever had contact with a foreign intelligence service. You pause, you haven't. You check the box, you submit, 3 months pass, nothing. Then a letter arrives, no letterhead, a P.O. box in Northern Virginia. It doesn't say CIA. It says Office of Personnel. You're invited for an assessment. No date. You call the number. A woman gives you a date. She doesn't give you her name. You drive to a nondescript office building in Tyson's Corner, Virginia. No signs, no logos. A receptionist who doesn't smile. You sit in a waiting room with 11 other people. Nobody speaks. You all stare at the same beige wall for 20 minutes before anyone calls a name. The assessment takes 2 days. Polygraph, psychological evaluation, written tests, a panel interview where 3 people ask you questions you aren't allowed to answer fully, even to yourself. They ask about your finances, your relationships, whether you've used drugs, whether any member of your family has ties to a foreign government. One question stays with you. Have you ever done anything you would be ashamed to see reported publicly? You think for 2 seconds longer than you intend to. That pause goes somewhere. You don't know where. 6 months later, a second letter, conditional acceptance, Directorate of Operations. You'll begin the career trainee program at Camp Perry, Virginia, unofficially called the Farm. You tell your parents you got a government job in analysis in Washington. They're proud of you. Your mother asks if there's good parking. You say yes. You drive south on I-64 the following Sunday. The trees close in on both sides of the highway. Dense. Unbroken. You can't see past the next curve. You feel the first weight of it settle on your shoulders. The specific gravity of a life that must now be lived in 2 registers simultaneously. The one people see, and the one that's real. Camp Perry doesn't look like what you imagine. You imagine concrete, fences, men with earpieces. What you get is pine trees, a lake, gravel roads, and a smell like cut grass after rain. If you didn't know, you'd think it was a state park. A retreat for mid-level government managers who need a team-building weekend. You know, your class has 28 people, former military, former academics, a woman who speaks 4 languages and won't say which ones, a man who spent 6 years as a homicide detective in Baltimore and has the particular stillness of someone who has learned to wait. You don't know their real names for the first 3 weeks. You use work names. Yours is Caldwell. The coursework doesn't ease you in. Surveillance detection. How to identify a tale before they know they've been made. Dead drops. Document passing in crowds. Cover construction. How to build a story that holds under sustained pressure. How to make a lie feel less like a lie and more like an alternate version of reality you've simply chosen to inhabit. The instructors never raise their voices. That's what unsettles you most. They speak the way surgeons speak, precise, clinical, completely unbothered by the weight of what they're describing. One afternoon, you're given a cover identity, mid-level trade consultant, name Marcus Webb. You're sent into a nearby town with a single objective: make contact with a retired school teacher at a diner. He doesn't know he's part of an exercise. You sit at his table for 40 minutes. You buy him coffee. You get him talking about his son, who works in defense contracting. You extract 3 pieces of personal information he would never have given a stranger. You drive back to Camp Perry, you write the report. You feel something that isn't quite guilt and isn't quite pride. You file it away. You learn to do that with feelings here, not suppress them. Compartmentalize. Store them the way you'd store sensitive documents. Accessible. Controlled, not left lying open on a desk. Week 7. One trainee is gone by morning. Bunk cleared. No explanation given. You learn not to ask. By the final month, something has shifted permanently in how you read a room. You notice exits before you notice people. You clock eye contact and how long it holds. You catch yourself reading the hands of strangers before their faces. 19 of you pass. You're given your first posting. Amman, Jordan. You're 26. You work out of the U.S. Embassy in Amman under diplomatic cover as a second secretary for economic affairs. Your colleagues in the political section believe you. Your Jordanian counterparts mostly believe you. The ones who don't, the senior officers of the General Intelligence Directorate, have the professional courtesy to pretend. Your actual job has one sentence: find people with access to information the United States government wants. Build a relationship. Convince them to betray their country, their organization, their employer, ideally without them fully understanding that's what they're doing until it's too late to walk it back. By your second year, you have two active sources. The first is a low-level official in the Jordanian finance ministry. Economic forecasting data. His motivation is money, clean, transactional, easy to manage. The second is a Lebanese businessman who travels regularly to Damascus. Loose network of contacts inside the Assad government's outer circle. His motivation is harder to name. A mixture of ideology, personal grievance, and the seductive sensation of mattering to someone powerful. You meet him every 3 weeks, rotating locations, a restaurant near the third circle, a hotel lobby in Abdoun, a parking garage off Garden Street, never the same place twice in the same month. He tells you things, you write them into cables that travel encrypted to Langley. You never know what happens to them once they leave your hands. You send information up and it disappears the way water disappears into dry ground after rain. No trace, no confirmation, nothing. One evening, a source you've been cultivating for 4 months goes quiet. A Syrian engineer, tangential connections to a procurement network, 2 weeks of silence, then a message through a cutout. He wants to stop, no explanation. You write the termination report, flag the circumstances as ambiguous, possible surveillance, possible fear, possible personal circumstances you never had visibility into. Your station chief reviews it, says nothing, signs off. You spend months wondering whether the engineer is alive, whether you missed something in his behavior you should have caught, a shift in pattern, a hesitation, something. You don't get an answer. You're beginning to understand the architecture of this job. It is made almost entirely of unanswered questions, and you are expected to keep working inside them. You're 31. You're back in Virginia. Langley, the original building, marble floor in the lobby, the CIA seal set into the stone, the Book of Honor on the north wall where a star is carved for every officer killed in the line of duty. No names for the ones still classified, just stars. You count them sometimes when you walk past. You've moved into targeting. Your job is no longer to handle sources, it's to find them. To study a foreign intelligence target, a ministry, a procurement network, a regional military command, and map the human terrain inside it with the precision of a surgeon mapping tissue before a cut. Who has access? Who has grievances? Who is underpaid, overlooked, passed over for promotion 3 years running? Who has a sick child and debt they cannot mention to their superiors? Who travels internationally? Who has a gap in their biography that suggests something unresolved? Who might be reachable? You spend your day in a windowless office, signals intelligence, travel records, financial data, field reports from case officers in 6 countries. You build link charts, visual maps of relationships, associations, pressure points, vulnerabilities. You are, in the clinical language of the institution, identifying human beings as potential assets. You don't think about it in those terms. You think about it in terms of access, information that exists and how to reach it. One targeting package takes you 8 months. A mid-level official inside a foreign ministry in Southeast Asia. You map his finances, his travel patterns, his professional frustrations, his particular need to be seen as more significant than his title suggests. You write the approach recommendation. A case officer in the field executes it. The recruitment is clean, fast, almost too easy. The case officer tells you later. You feel satisfaction. Then you feel nothing. The cycle continues. Headquarters is different from the field in one specific way. Nobody tells you before you arrive. In the field, the friction is external, physical risk, isolation, performing a false identity under sustained pressure. Here, the friction is internal. You are surrounded by extraordinarily intelligent people who disagree with each other constantly and are structurally prohibited from saying so directly. Disagreements travel through passive constructions in written cables. A phrase like this assessment may benefit from further sourcing means I think this is wrong, and the officer who wrote it is dangerously overconfident. You learn the language in 3 weeks. By month 2, you're writing in it. You're 38, Nairobi, Kenya, chief of station, the senior CIA officer in country. Everything inside the embassy with your station's operational equities runs through you. Sources, foreign liaison relationships, ongoing collection operations, counterterrorism coordination with the Kenyan National Intelligence Service. You have a staff of 11. Several operate under non-official cover. NOCs, no embassy affiliation, no diplomatic protection. If something goes wrong, if they're caught, the United States government will express no knowledge of their existence or their activities. You brief the ambassador on intelligence matters once a week. She's sharp, former deputy national security advisor. She knows more about how the building operates than she has ever let on. You respect each other with the careful distance of two professionals whose mandates occasionally point in opposite directions. East Africa in this period is not quiet. Al-Shabaab maintains operational reach out of southern Somalia, active cells in Mombasa and Malindi. The threat reporting is dense, sometimes contradictory, always urgent. You read it every morning before 6. One morning, a source reporting through a third country cutout provides intelligence suggesting an attack is being planned against a commercial target in Nairobi. 30 days. The reporting is single source, uncorroborated. The source has been reliable for 2 years, but has shown a pattern of slight exaggeration, a tendency to keep his value high and his payments coming. You have to make a call. You write the threat assessment, plausible but unconfirmed. You recommend increased surveillance coverage and coordination with Kenyan services. You do not recommend a public warning. A public warning burns the source and exposes the method. 30 days pass. Nothing happens. You will never know if nothing happened because the plot was disrupted, because the reporting was inflated, because the threat was real, and the timeline simply shifted forward into someone else's watch. You write the follow-up cable, measured, precise, professionally inconclusive. That night you eat dinner alone in your residence. You pour a glass of scotch you keep specifically for moments that require a glass of scotch. You sit with the particular discomfort of a decision made under conditions of incomplete information, the outcome of which you will never fully understand. This is the center of the job. You realize not the recruitment, not the intelligence, the tolerance for irreducible ambiguity. You develop a high tolerance. You have no other option. You're 44, back at Langley, senior intelligence officer, counterterrorism center. One of the most operationally active components in the building since September 11 rewrote the entire architecture of American intelligence from the ground up. You manage a division, 40 analysts and case officers. You review operational proposals. You sit on targeting boards. You write assessments that travel to the National Security Council inside folders that don't leave the room. The pressure at this level is different from anything that came before it. It is not the pressure of physical danger. That was the field. That was a different body, a different set of nerves. This pressure has no physical location. It lives in the specific weight of consequence. Your words shape policy. A single phrase in a presidential daily brief, the intelligence summary delivered to the Oval Office each morning before 7, can alter the trajectory of a foreign policy decision, can reposition troops, can authorize a drone strike over a compound in a country whose name will not appear in any public record connected to this building. You learn to write with a precision that borders on painful. Caveat appropriately. Without hedging so severely, the assessment loses its operational value. State confidence levels honestly, even when the consumer, the policymaker, the person sitting across from the president wants certainty you cannot provide and would be lying to manufacture. One evening, a proposal moves through your division, an operation targeting a facilitator inside a financing network. The intelligence is solid. The target is real. The operation, if approved, will likely result in the target's capture or death. You review it for 90 minutes. You approve it. You drive home. You make dinner. Your daughter is 14. She sits across from you watching part of a film on her laptop, earbuds in, completely unreachable in the way 14-year-olds are completely unreachable. She thinks you work in data management for the government. You watch her for a moment. You think about the distance between what this evening looks like and what this evening contains. A man's name on a proposal, your signature beneath it, dinner, a film, a 14-year-old who doesn't look up. The enormity of this work is invisible from the outside. You have spent 2 decades making sure it stays that way. You're 51, third most powerful person in the building, deputy director for operations, head of the National Clandestine Service. Every human intelligence collection program, every covert action operation running anywhere on Earth moves through your office before it moves anywhere else. Operational equities in over 100 countries. The largest network of human intelligence officers any organization in American history has ever fielded. You brief the director daily, the National Security Advisor weekly. Twice a year you testify before the Senate Intelligence Committee in closed session. A room with no windows and an armed guard posted outside the door who does not know what is being said inside it. You are responsible for people you will never meet, in places you have never been, doing things that will never be written in any document that survives its operational lifespan. 3 months into your tenure, an operation in Eastern Europe begins to show signs of compromise. A source, 11 years in place. Deep penetration of a foreign intelligence service. Suddenly his communication patterns shift. Messages grow shorter. Meeting intervals stretch. The content thins. The field assessment. Possible surveillance. Your assessment reviewing the identical data. Possible controlled contact. The source may be operating under duress. Feeding you material a hostile service has pre-approved. The difference between those two assessments is not academic. If it's surveillance, you extract him immediately. If it's controlled contact, extraction confirms to the hostile service that you identified the compromise. It burns the detection method. Every future operation that depends on that method goes dark. You convene a panel. 5 senior officers, 4 days of review. The panel splits. You leave him in place for 90 days under enhanced scrutiny. Day 67, he transmits a prearranged distress signal. 3 characters in a specific sequence that means one thing, and one thing only. You extract him within 48 hours. He's safe. He tells debriefers the hostile service identified him 6 months ago. 11 years of cables. Assessments built on his reporting. Decisions shaped by intelligence that was fabricated and handed to him to pass to you. You order a retrospective review of every piece of intelligence he ever provided. It takes 14 months. You don't sleep well during those 14 months. Not once. You're 57. The president called on a Thursday morning. You were in a budget meeting on the 4th floor. You stepped into the hallway. He offered you the job in 4 sentences. You took 24 hours to answer. Not because you were uncertain. You had understood for years that this was where the arc of your career was pointing. You took 24 hours because you believed the weight of it deserved at least one night of clear reckoning. One night of sitting with it before it became yours permanently. You are confirmed by the Senate 71 to 29. The building changes when you walk into it now, not the building itself. The marble hasn't moved, the seal hasn't shifted. The stars on the north wall are exactly where they were the first morning you walked past them as a 31-year-old targeting officer who still counted them out of habit. But the way the building relates to you has changed entirely. Every room reconfigures itself around your presence before you cross the threshold. Your morning brief begins at 6:45. Threats, ongoing operations, intelligence gaps across every geographic and functional division of the agency. You then attend the presidential daily brief at the White House. You sit in rooms where the decisions being made will not be publicly known for 30 years. If ever, the work at this level is no longer primarily about intelligence. It is almost entirely about power, its management, its negotiation, its careful application inside an environment where multiple institutions with overlapping authorities are all trying to influence the same set of outcomes simultaneously. 6 months into your tenure, a sensitive collection program is leaked to a journalist. Not its existence, its specific operational details. Details that could only have come from someone with very limited access. Someone inside. The investigation runs 9 months. The source, a mid-grade analyst in a support division. He believes sincerely the program represented a constitutional overreach. He is arrested on a Tuesday. You sit with the briefing from your general counsel for a long moment without speaking. You think about the difference between a person who leaks to damage an institution and a person who leaks because they believe the institution has damaged something larger than itself. The distinction is real. It doesn't change your obligation. You authorize the referral, you go back to work, you're 62. You left on a January afternoon. The way everyone leaves eventually, either pushed or pulled, in your case the latter. A new administration, different priorities, a desire to install their own person in the building. The transition was professional. 2 weeks of briefing. You handed over the programs, the relationships, the ongoing operations. You shook hands with your successor in the 7th floor corridor. You walked out of the building. You told yourself it was the last time. You knew that wasn't entirely true. These institutions don't release people cleanly. There is no clean separation from 35 years of compartmented knowledge, operational relationships, and the specific way this work rewires how you read the world. You carry it out with you the way you'd carry scar tissue. Invisible from the outside, permanently load-bearing on the inside. The consulting offers arrive within the week. Think tanks, defense contractors, a private equity firm that describes your value as geopolitical risk assessment capability. A phrase that makes the work sound like a product, which in certain contexts it now is. A university that wants you to run a new center on intelligence and national security. You take the university position, you teach a graduate seminar, 12 students, all of them brilliant, idealistic, working on theses about oversight frameworks and collection authorities and the ethical architecture of covert action. They ask you questions you spent 35 years not being permitted to answer. You answer as many as you're legally able to. You feel the specific frustration of a person who knows more than they're allowed to say in a room full of people who need to hear it. One student stays after the penultimate session. Young woman from Minneapolis, first-generation college graduate, scholarship student, the sharpest analytical mind in the room by a distance that isn't close. She asks you one question. Do you think it was worth it? All of it. You sit with it longer than you have sat with any question in recent memory. Longer than budget proposals, longer than operational reviews, longer than confirmation hearing preparation. You sit with it the way you used to sit with threat assessments that had no clean answer. You tell her worth it is the wrong frame. The work was necessary. Whether it was done well, whether you did it well, that is the question you will spend the rest of your life trying to answer honestly. She writes it down. You watch her write it, and you think that might be the truest thing you have said out loud in years. You're not entirely sure what to do with that. You're 71. Your name appears in 3 declassified historical reviews released over the past decade. In 2 of them, your role in specific operations is redacted entirely. Black bars where your decisions used to be. In the 3rd, your name appears once in a footnote, referencing a targeting authorization connected to a program later assessed to have produced significant intelligence value. The same footnote references a separate internal review, the handling of a source who did not survive his extraction. His name is still classified. You know his name. You have known it for 19 years. You think about him more than you think about the intelligence he provided, more than the programs, more than the budgets and the policy briefings and the morning briefs that began at 6:45. You think about a specific afternoon in 2009 when you reviewed his file and assessed that his reporting was reliable and his security posture was adequate. You think about whether you were right. You think about whether being right was enough. These are not the same question. You understand that now in a way you didn't at 57. At 57, you believed competence and conscience were the same instrument. At 71, you understand they are 2 separate things that occasionally point in the same direction. Occasionally, you give a commencement address at a small college in Ohio. They've invited you because you represent accomplished public service. The students are 22. They look exactly the way you looked at 22. Uncertain, ambitious, not yet aware of the specific shape their compromises will take, only that compromises are something that happen to other people. You tell them every institution asks something of you. The question worth spending your life on is whether what it asks is equal to what it takes. They applaud. Afterward, a young man approaches you near the parking lot. Dark suit, polished, composed, slightly too still in the particular way that stillness is trained rather than natural. You recognize it immediately, the way you'd recognize your own handwriting on someone else's letter. He introduces himself quietly, mentions a particular office in a particular building in Northern Virginia. He has a few questions about your time in Nairobi. If you have a moment, you say you have a moment. You walk together away from the crowd toward the shade at the edge of the lawn. The air is warm. Somewhere behind you, 222-year-olds are taking photographs with their families, unaware of the specific weight of what is being exchanged 10 feet away. The institution never entirely lets go, and maybe you never entirely wanted it to.